The morning sun streamed through the tall glass windows of the upscale bank, casting a golden glow over the polished marble floors. The lobby was a symphony of quiet efficiency. Tellers in crisp uniforms moved behind counters, their fingers dancing over keyboards, while well-dressed customers waited patiently in plush leather chairs. The air smelled faintly of coffee and expensive cologne, a subtle reminder of the wealth that flowed through this institution. Monica Carter stepped through the revolving doors, her heels clicking softly against the floor. She was impeccably dressed in a tailored navy blue pantsuit, her hair styled in sleek, natural curls that framed her face. A leather briefcase swung lightly in her hand, its polished surface catching the light. She exuded confidence, her posture straight and her expression calm. But there was a sharpness in her eyes that hinted at the intelligence and determination beneath the surface. She had been looking forward to this meeting for weeks. As a successful entrepreneur and investor, Monica had built her reputation on hard work, strategic thinking, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Today's appointment was no ordinary meeting. It was a chance to discuss a major investment opportunity with the bank's leadership. She had prepared meticulously, reviewing financial reports and drafting proposals late into the night. This was her moment to make an impression, and she wasn't about to let anything derail it. As she approached the reception desk, she noticed the receptionist, a young woman with perfectly coiffed blonde hair, glance up briefly before returning to her computer screen. Monica cleared her throat softly and offered a polite smile. "Good morning. I'm here for a 10 a.m. meeting with Mr. Richards." The receptionist didn't look up. "Name? Monica Carter." The woman typed something into her computer, her manicured nails clicking against the keys. After a moment, she said, "Take a seat. He'll be with you shortly." Monica hesitated. She had arrived 10 minutes early, as she always did, and she expected to be shown to the meeting room promptly. But she nodded and turned toward the seating area, choosing a chair near the window. She crossed her legs and set her briefcase beside her, her gaze sweeping the room. The bank was a study in opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, their prisms casting tiny rainbows on the walls. The artwork on display was modern and abstract, each piece likely worth more than the average person's annual salary. The other customers in the lobby were equally polished. Men in tailored suits, women in designer dresses, all exuding an air of privilege. Monica fit right in, or so she thought. Minutes ticked by, and the receptionist made no move to notify Mr. Richards of her arrival. Monica checked her watch, her brow furrowing slightly. She had a tight schedule, and she couldn't afford to waste time. Just as she was about to approach the desk again, a man in a sharp gray suit strode into the lobby. His name tag read Mr. Richards, bank manager. He was in his mid-40s, with thinning hair and a slightly protruding stomach that strained against his shirt buttons. His eyes scanned the room, landing briefly on Monica before moving on. Monica stood, smoothing her suit jacket. "Mr. Richards?" "I'm Monica Carter. We have a 10 a.m. meeting." Richards glanced at her, his expression unreadable. "Ah yes, take a seat. I'll be with you shortly." She blinked, caught off guard by his dismissive tone. "I've already been waiting for 15 minutes. I believe we have a scheduled appointment." He waved a hand vaguely. "I'm a busy man, Miss Carter. You'll have to wait your turn." Before she could respond, he turned on his heel and walked away, leaving her standing there, her cheeks burning with a mix of embarrassment and anger. She took a deep breath, reminding herself to stay composed. This wasn't the first time she'd encountered this kind of treatment, and it wouldn't be the last. But she refused to let it rattle her. She sat back down, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. As she waited, she couldn't help but notice the stark contrast in how other customers were treated. A man in a tailored Armani suit walked in, and Richards immediately greeted him with a warm handshake and a broad smile. They exchanged a few words before Richards personally escorted him to a private office. A few minutes later, an elderly woman in a fur coat was ushered to the front of the line, her every need attended to with obsequious care. Monica's patience began to wear thin. She checked her watch again. 30 minutes had passed since her arrival. The receptionist was now chatting with a colleague, their laughter carrying across the room. Monica caught snippets of their conversation, and though they didn't mention her by name, the way they glanced in her direction made her skin crawl. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Monica stood and approached the reception desk once more. "Excuse me," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I've been waiting for nearly an hour. Could you please check on Mr. Richards?" The receptionist sighed, as if Monica's request were a great inconvenience. "He's busy. You'll have to wait." Monica's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "I understand he's busy, but I have an appointment. I'd appreciate it if you could remind him." The woman rolled her eyes and picked up the phone, muttering something under her breath. Monica returned to her seat, her heart pounding. She wasn't used to being treated this way, and the injustice of it all was starting to get to her. But she reminded herself of her goal. This meeting was too important to jeopardize over a petty slight. As she waited, she noticed the whispers. The staff members were huddled together, their eyes darting in her direction. One of them smirked, and another stifled a laugh. Monica's stomach churned. She knew what they were thinking, that she didn't belong here, that she was wasting their time. But she refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing her upset. 2 hours after her arrival, Monica was still waiting. The lobby had emptied out, and the staff had returned to their duties, but no one had come to fetch her. She sat there, her back straight and her expression neutral, but inside, she was seething. This wasn't just about disrespect. It was about something deeper, something uglier, and she wasn't going to let it slide. The clock on the wall ticked loudly, each second stretching into an eternity. Monica sat in the same chair, her briefcase resting neatly at her feet. The initial rush of customers had dwindled, leaving the lobby eerily quiet. The receptionist was now engrossed in her phone, her fingers scrolling absently through social media. The other employees had retreated behind their desks, their low murmurs and occasional laughter echoing through the spacious room. Monica checked her watch for what felt like the 100th time. 2 hours. She had been waiting for 2 hours. Her patience, once unshakable, was beginning to fray at the edges. She had tried to rationalize the delay. Perhaps Mr. Richards was dealing with an emergency, or maybe there had been a miscommunication. But the way the staff had treated her, the whispers, the smirks, it was impossible to ignore the truth. This wasn't an oversight. This was deliberate. She took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around the armrests of her chair. She had faced discrimination before, of course. As a black woman in a predominantly white, male-dominated industry, she was no stranger to subtle slights and outright disrespect. But she had always risen above it, using her intelligence and determination to prove her worth. Today, however, felt different. Today, the injustice was palpable, and it was testing her resolve. Finally, she stood, smoothing the wrinkles from her suit. She approached the reception desk with measured steps, her heels clicking against the marble floor. The receptionist looked up, her expression a mix of annoyance and indifference. "Yes?" she asked, her tone clipped. Monica forced a polite smile. "I've been waiting for over 2 hours. I'd like to remind you that I have a scheduled appointment with Mr. Richards. Could you please check on him again?" The receptionist sighed, as if Monica's request were an unreasonable burden. She picked up the phone and dialed a number, her eyes rolling as she waited for someone to answer. After a brief conversation, she hung up and said, "He's still busy. You'll have to wait." Monica's smile faltered, but she kept her voice steady. "I understand he's busy, but I've been here since 10 a.m. This is unacceptable." The receptionist shrugged, her indifference grating on Monica's nerves. "I'm just doing my job. If you don't like it, you can leave." Monica's jaw tightened, but she refused to let her anger show. Instead, she turned and walked back to her seat, her mind racing. She couldn't leave, not when so much was at stake. But she couldn't continue to be treated this way either. She needed to take control of the situation. As she sat down, she noticed Mr. Richards emerging from his office. He was speaking to a colleague, his laughter booming across the room. Monica's heart quickened. This was her chance. She stood again and approached him, her posture confident and her expression calm. "Mr. Richards," she said, her voice firm but polite. "I've been waiting for over 2 hours for our meeting. I'd appreciate it if we could proceed now." Richards turned to her, his smile fading. He glanced at his watch, then back at her, his expression one of mild irritation. "Ms. Carter, I'm a very busy man. You'll have to be patient." Monica's patience snapped. "I've been patient," she said, her tone sharper than she intended. "I arrived on time for our appointment, and I've been waiting ever since. This is unprofessional, and I expect better from a bank of this caliber." Richard's face flushed, his irritation turning to anger. He stepped closer, his voice rising. "Listen here, Ms. Carter. People like you need to learn to wait. You're not the only one with important business to attend to." The room fell silent. Customers and staff alike turned to watch the exchange, their eyes wide with curiosity. Monica felt a surge of anger, but she forced herself to remain calm. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing her lose her composure. "People like me?" she repeated, her voice icy. "And what, exactly, do you mean by that?" Richards hesitated, realizing he had gone too far. But instead of apologizing, he doubled down. "You know exactly what I mean. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." He turned to walk away, but Monica wasn't finished. "Mr. Richards," she said, her voice carrying across the room, "I'll wait a little longer, but I suggest you reconsider how you treat your clients. You never know who might be watching." Richards paused, his back stiff. He glanced over his shoulder, his expression a mix of anger and uncertainty. But he said nothing, disappearing into his office and slamming the door behind him. The lobby was eerily quiet, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Monica returned to her seat, her heart pounding. She could feel the eyes of the staff and customers on her, their whispers filling the silence. But she held her head high, refusing to let them see how much the encounter had shaken her. As she waited, she replayed the conversation in her mind. Richard's words had cut deep, not because they were unexpected, but because they confirmed what she had always known, that no matter how successful she became, some people would always see her as less than. But she refused to let their prejudice define her. She had worked too hard, sacrificed too much to be treated this way. The minutes dragged on, each one heavier than the last. Monica's anger simmered beneath the surface, but she channeled it into determination. She wouldn't leave. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of driving her away. She would wait as long as it took, and when the time came, she would make sure they understood the cost of their actions. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the doors to the bank swung open. A group of well-dressed individuals entered, their presence commanding immediate attention. Monica recognized them instantly. They were the bank's board members, accompanied by the regional director. Her heart leapt. This was it, the moment she had been waiting for. As the board members approached, Monica stood, her briefcase in hand. She met their eyes with a steady gaze, her expression calm and composed. The room held its breath as the regional director extended his hand. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice warm and respectful. "We've been looking forward to meeting you." Monica shook his hand, a small smile playing on her lips. "The pleasure is mine," she replied. "I've been waiting for quite some time." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. The regional director turned to Mr. Richards, who had emerged from his office, his face pale. "Is there a reason Ms. Carter was kept waiting?" he asked, his tone sharp. Richards stammered, his confidence crumbling. I didn't realize." Monica interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "I wanted to see how customers are treated here, and I must say, I'm not impressed." The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The board members exchanged grim looks, and the regional director nodded. "We'll address this immediately," he said. "Thank you for bringing it to our attention, Ms. Carter." Monica nodded, her gaze sweeping the room. She could see the fear in the staff's eyes, the realization dawning on them that they had underestimated her. She felt a surge of satisfaction, but it was tempered by the knowledge that this was just the beginning. The real work, the fight for equality and respect, was far from over. As the board members led her to the meeting room, Monica glanced over her shoulder at Mr. Richards. He stood frozen, his face a mask of shock and regret. She allowed herself a small smile. The breaking point had come and gone, and now it was time for justice to be served. The lobby of the bank, once a quiet space of polished marble and hushed whispers, was now charged with an electric tension. The arrival of the board members had shifted the atmosphere entirely. They moved with purpose, their tailored suits and confident strides commanding attention. The staff, who had been lounging at their desks or chatting idly, now stood at attention, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease. Monica remained calm, her briefcase in hand, as the regional director, a tall, distinguished man with silver hair and a commanding presence, approached her. His handshake was firm, his smile genuine. "Ms. Carter," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "It's an honor to finally meet you in person. We've heard so much about your work." Monica returned the smile, her demeanor poised and professional. "The honor is mine," she replied. "I've been looking forward to this meeting." The board members gathered around her, their attention focused entirely on her. One of them, a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, stepped forward. "We're thrilled to have you join us, Ms. Carter. Your insights will be invaluable as we move forward." Mr. Richards, who had been hovering awkwardly at the edge of the group, finally found his voice. I wasn't aware Ms. Carter was expected," he stammered, his face pale. "There must have been some miscommunication." The regional director turned to him, his expression hardening. "Miscommunication? Ms. Carter is one of our most esteemed investors and a newly appointed member of the board. Her appointment was confirmed weeks ago. How is it that you were unaware?" Richards opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. His eyes darted to Monica, then to the board members, and finally to the staff, who were watching the scene with a mixture of shock and fear. The receptionist, who had been so dismissive earlier, looked as though she might faint. Monica, ever composed, stepped forward. "I arrived at 10 a.m. for our scheduled meeting," she said, her voice calm but firm. "I was told to wait, and I did for over 2 hours. During that time, I observed how customers are treated here. I must say I was not impressed." The board members exchanged glances, their expressions darkening. The regional director turned to Richards, his voice sharp. "Is this true? You kept Ms. Carter waiting for 2 hours?" Richards swallowed hard, his face now a sickly shade of gray. I didn't realize who she was. I thought." "You thought what?" The director interrupted, his tone icy. "That she wasn't important? That her time was less valuable than yours?" Richards flinched, his confidence crumbling. "I apologize, Ms. Carter. It was a misunderstanding." Monica regarded him coolly. "A misunderstanding? Or a reflection of how you treat certain customers?" The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging in the air. The staff shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between Monica, Richards, and the board members. The receptionist, who had been so smug earlier, now looked as though she wanted to disappear. The regional director turned to Monica, his expression apologetic. "Ms. Carter, I can't begin to express how sorry I am for this unacceptable treatment. This is not the standard we uphold at this institution." Monica nodded, her gaze steady. "I appreciate that, but this isn't just about me. It's about how all customers are treated. I observed other individuals being served promptly, while I was ignored and dismissed. That kind of behavior has no place in a reputable bank." The board members murmured their agreement, their expressions grim. The woman who had spoken earlier stepped forward again. "Ms. Carter is right. This is a serious issue, and it needs to be addressed immediately." The regional director nodded. "Agreed. Mr. Richards, your behavior today is inexcusable. You will be relieved of your duties effective immediately. We'll conduct a full review of the bank's operations to ensure this kind of discrimination does not happen again." Richard's face went completely white. But But I've been with this bank for 15 years. You can't just. We can and we will, the director said, cutting him off. Your actions today have shown a blatant disregard for our values and our clients. We don't tolerate this kind of behavior. Richards looked around the room as if hoping someone would come to his defense. But the staff avoided his gaze, their expressions a mix of fear and relief. He turned to Monica, his eyes pleading. Ms. Carter, please. I didn't mean any disrespect. Monica held up a hand, silencing him. Your actions spoke louder than words, Mr. Richards. I hope this serves as a lesson, not just for you, but for everyone here. The room was silent, the tension almost unbearable. The board members exchanged a few quiet words, then turned back to Monica. Ms. Carter, the regional director said, we'd like to proceed with our meeting. There's much to discuss, and we value your input. Monica nodded, her expression softening. Of course, I'm ready when you are. As the board members led her toward the conference room, Monica glanced over her shoulder at the staff. They stood frozen, their faces a mixture of awe and fear. She allowed herself a small smile, knowing that her presence had already made an impact. The receptionist, who had been so dismissive earlier, stepped forward hesitantly. Ms. Carter, I'm so sorry for how I treated you. I didn't know. Monica held up a hand, stopping her. It's not about who I am. It's about how you treat everyone. Remember that. The woman nodded, her eyes filled with regret. I will. I promise. Monica gave her a small nod, then turned and followed the board members into the conference room. As the door closed behind her, the lobby erupted into whispers. The staff huddled together, their voices low and urgent. Did you hear that? She's on the board. I can't believe Richards kept her waiting. What was he thinking? This is going to change everything. Richards stood alone in the middle of the room, his shoulders slumped and his face a mask of defeat. He looked around, as if realizing for the first time the gravity of his actions. The whispers of the staff seemed to echo in his ears, a constant reminder of his mistake. In the conference room, Monica took her seat at the head of the table. The board members gathered around her. The regional director cleared his throat. Ms. Carter, we'd like to start by formally welcoming you to the board. Your expertise and vision are exactly what we need to move forward. Monica smiled, her confidence unwavering. Thank you. I'm looking forward to working with all of you. But before we begin, I'd like to propose an initiative to address the issues I observed today. Discrimination has no place in this institution, and I believe we have an opportunity to set a new standard. The board members nodded, their expressions serious. We're listening, the director said. As Monica outlined her ideas, the staff outside the conference room continued to whisper, their fears slowly giving way to admiration. They had underestimated her, but now they understood. Monica Carter was a force to be reckoned with, and her presence would change everything. The conference room was bathed in the soft glow of the afternoon sun, its large windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Monica sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding the attention of everyone in the room. The board members listened intently as she outlined her vision for the bank's future, her voice steady and confident. Discrimination has no place in this institution, she said, her gaze sweeping the room. What I experienced today was not an isolated incident. It's a symptom of a larger problem. If we want to remain a leader in this industry, we need to address this issue head-on. The regional director nodded, his expression serious. You're absolutely right, Ms. Carter. We've been too complacent for too long. What do you propose? Monica leaned forward, her hands resting on the table. First, we need to implement mandatory training for all staff on diversity, equity, and inclusion. This training should be ongoing, not just a one-time event. Second, we need to establish a clear protocol for handling complaints of discrimination or unfair treatment. And third, we need to hold everyone accountable, regardless of their position. The board members exchanged glances, their expressions thoughtful. The woman who had spoken earlier, a senior board member named Margaret, nodded in agreement. I think these are excellent suggestions. But how do we ensure that these changes are implemented effectively? Monica smiled. By leading by example. As board members, we need to set the tone. We need to show the staff that we take these issues seriously and that we're committed to creating a culture of respect and equality. The regional director leaned back in his chair, a look of admiration on his face. Ms. Carter, I have to say, I'm impressed. You've clearly put a lot of thought into this, and I fully support your proposals. Let's make this a priority. The meeting continued for another hour, with Monica leading the discussion and the board members actively participating. By the time they adjourned, a clear plan of action had been established, and everyone felt a renewed sense of purpose. As the board members filed out of the room, the regional director lingered behind. Ms. Carter, he said, his voice low, I want to personally apologize for what happened today. It's unacceptable, and I'm deeply sorry. Monica nodded, her expression softening. Thank you. I appreciate that. But this isn't just about me. It's about creating a better environment for everyone. I'm confident that we can make a real difference. The director smiled. I agree, and I'm grateful to have you on our team. As Monica left the conference room, she was met with a sea of curious faces. The staff had gathered in the lobby, their expressions a mix of awe and apprehension. They had heard snippets of the meeting through the closed door, and they knew that change was coming. Monica walked to the center of the room, her presence commanding attention. May I have your attention, please? She said, her voice clear and strong. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. Even Mr. Richards, who had been standing in the corner looking defeated, turned to listen. I want to take a moment to address what happened today, Monica began. What I experienced was not just a personal slight. It was a reflection of a larger issue. Discrimination, whether based on race, gender, or any other factor, has no place in this institution. And it's our responsibility to ensure that everyone who walks through these doors is treated with respect and dignity. She paused, letting her words sink in. The staff shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting to the floor. Monica continued, her tone firm but compassionate. I know that change can be difficult, but it's necessary. We're going to implement new policies and training programs to address these issues. And we're going to hold everyone accountable, from the top down. This isn't about punishment, it's about growth. It's about creating a better, more inclusive environment for all of us. She looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as she could. I believe in this institution, and I believe in all of you. We have the power to make a real difference, not just for ourselves, but for our customers and our community. Let's work together to create a culture of respect and equality. The room was silent for a moment, then a slow clap began. It started with one person, then spread until the entire staff was applauding. Monica smiled, a sense of satisfaction washing over her. She had made her point, and she had done it with grace and dignity. As the applause died down, the regional director stepped forward. Thank you, Ms. Carter. Your words are inspiring, and I know we're all committed to making these changes. Let's get to work. The staff dispersed, their conversations filled with a sense of purpose and determination. Monica watched them go, a feeling of hope swelling in her chest. She knew that change wouldn't happen overnight, but she was confident that they were on the right path. As she turned to leave, she noticed Mr. Richards standing nearby, his expression a mix of regret and resignation. He approached her hesitantly, his voice barely above a whisper. Ms. Carter, I want to apologize. I was wrong, and I'm truly sorry. Monica regarded him for a moment, her expression unreadable. Then she nodded. Apology accepted, but actions speak louder than words, Mr. Richards. I hope you'll take this as an opportunity to reflect and grow. Richards nodded, his eyes filled with gratitude. I will. Thank you. Monica gave him a small smile, then turned and walked toward the exit. As she stepped out into the bright afternoon sunlight, she felt a sense of accomplishment. She had faced discrimination head-on, and she had emerged stronger for it. But more importantly, she had sparked a change that would benefit everyone. The story ends with Monica walking confidently down the street, her head held high. Behind her, the bank stood as a symbol of progress and possibility. And though the road ahead would be challenging, she knew that she had taken the first step toward a brighter future.